Today on Locked On Flames, we revisit the age-old question of, do the Flames run it back with the same group, or are there some valuable tweaks that can be made?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, I thought would be a good day to kind of break down what the Flames may do in terms of their free agency roster construction situation, about a month before free agency opens. That way, it gives us time to kind of stew and marinate in it and potentially open some ideas. Maybe there are some names on this list of players that the Flames could potentially target that you didn't think of before. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's dive right into this. So at the end of every season, you are met with the question of, are there changes that will have to be made, whether it's free agents leaving or players being traded, or do you kind of keep the same group minus a player or two and run it back? Is that something that you are confident in? Do you believe in your group? And is there tangible evidence that leads you to believe in your group rather than just vibes, I guess? I know that can kind of be a point of contention for fans, but believe it or not, unfortunately, vibes alone do not just win. They don't win you Stanley Cups. But on 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman has said that the Flames are going to be in the mix for some big names. We've talked about it on the show before. I don't know if the Flames are necessarily in a position where they need to be throwing out 7-year contracts at 27, 28, 29-year-olds. And it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me. Or really for the plan that they have said and set upon themselves. But how does it work? The Flames don't have that many pieces leaving this year, unless, say, I don't think this is what's going to happen, but as an example, say the Flames don't re-sign Morgan Frost as an RFA, he can just, he can go anywhere at that point if the Flames decide not to offer him a contract. And it's up to the Flames I don't think that's what they're going to do by any means, but ultimately there are minimal pieces that are likely to be leaving or traded. So are you essentially just going to be running it back with the same group? Do you think the Flames should be running it back with the same group? I mean, you can make an argument for both sides 100%, and that's why I'm here. And I do wonder if there is a world where they bring young players on as like short-term deals because they need to bridge a gap in the Flames development situation. Let's say they sign an older defenseman, let's just say, to bridge the gap until Hunter Brustewicz is ready. If they don't trade Andersson, like there is room for there to be small contracts for veteran players. However, I don't think that running it back with the same group is going to yield the results you want it to. We're going to talk about why I think that coming up next. But to me, the Flames absolutely have changes to make. I don't care if you are a Stanley Cup winning roster you still have changes you have to make. And I look at the final 4 teams remaining in the conference finals, and every single one of those rosters is going to face some sort of change. And a lot of it will be needed change or the inevitable change, like Ekblad leaving, or, I'm just thinking like Corey Perry leaving the Oilers. The Stars have some expiring contracts, and the Hurricanes have to figure out what they want to do with their core. So every roster is going to have to make tweaks. But at the end of the day, I'm coming back to the question of who are the Flames going to pursue and how are they going to pursue it? Because are you really just going to throw $13 million, which is about half of your available cap space, at Mitch Marner? Are you really going to throw $10 million at Sam Bennett for the next 7 years? Again, the Jonathan Huberdeau contract may be blinding me, but I think that sounds like a stupid idea for the position the Flames are currently in. It does not make sense to sign a 27, 28, 29-year-old to a 7-year deal when your plan is to rebuild, to continue to rebuild and get this roster into playoff form for a serious run in 3 to 4 years from now. Does not make any sense. Because it's not just that about the individual player alone. It is about the pieces around them. And, 4 years from now, Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be 35 with 2 years left on this contract. So, I feel like that really puts it in perspective for where the Flames are hoping to be at that time. But do they take the risk and go after a big name? Doesn't even have to be Marner or Bennett. What about Nikolai Ehlers? I think that he would be a great add, but I don't think you need to do it for 7 years. But what if Craig Conroy is just content with this roster because they did come so close to a playoff spot? And we're going to talk about that next, coming up here on Locked On Flames. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachio. Wonderful Pistachio is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shell variety. They are perfect to eat while I am on the go at work or here at home, snacking on the couch or at my desk. The salt and vinegar flavor is impeccable and to die for. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following along wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And this is something that I feel like the Flames do a lot. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like there has been ample opportunity for them to learn from this. Running it back with the same group is okay to do when you have the roster of the Dallas Stars, of the Florida Panthers, of the Hurricanes, of the Oilers, of the Jets. There obviously will be tweaks along the way, and nothing aggressive had been done, right? I mean, off-season changes happen, but it's not like someone went out and moved, got a needle mover. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to running it back with the same group. You aren't you have another quiet free agency like you did last season. It's nothing crazy. And I'm like looking at the roster right now, and you had overcrowding even before Mantha and Kirkland got hurt. So let's say you bring back your roster. You bring back Mantha, you bring back Kirkland, Joel Hanley, like these players aren't going anywhere. And you're still missing pieces. You are absolutely still missing pieces. Do I think that Mantha was a good touch to the Flames roster? Yeah, I do. But it was such a small sample size that I can't necessarily say it would have been impactful fully down the road. Kirkland is someone that I think is a great character guy. I think that he obviously does play hockey all right. He's all right. And his shootout skills are pretty handy. But to me, you are looking at another Kevin Rooney situation there. But again, you are still missing a lot of things here. There is no telling if Jonathan Huberdeau is going to have another 28 goal season. There was no predicting that from this time last year. If you told me on May 27th, 2024, that Jonathan Huberdeau was going to have a 28 goal campaign and be right behind Kadri in points, I would say you're crazy, and I would bet all of my money that you would be wrong. So, you can't tell. Of course, with Kadri, he has been a consistent offensive performer his entire career. So if he's going to take a dive, it's going to be unexpected. And he's getting older. So that dive is probably less unexpected as it may seem. But it is still going to hit the Flames like a ton of bricks, should that happen. Your defense is a hot mess. Just an absolute hot diggity dog mess. Your top pairing defenseman is a -38, which is a franchise worst. Who is paired with Kevin Ball, who, no shade to Kevin Ball, but he came in here as a bottom pairing defenseman. I think that he has stepped it up a lot. And he had a great year adjusting to the Flame system and playing alongside Rasmus Andersson. Love that. Love that so much. You have Mackenzie Weegar playing with Joel Hanley, Daniel Miramonov, who Miramonov is not, and Joel Hanley, they are not top 4 pairing defensemen. Miro has struggled big time with the Flames since signing his extension. Granted, it's just this upcoming year left, but his spot is still a valuable spot for a player who could make a difference. Joel Hanley, you're keeping him. Okay, so you're probably going to keep him on that second pairing. Just makes the most sense based off of how last season ended. So now you're looking at Braden Pahal and Jake Bean as your bottom pairing. Where's Hunter Brustowicz? Where's Zane Parekh? Where are players that are truly here for your long-term plan? Because Braden Pahal is not going to be a Flame after next season. I have a very strong feeling about that. And I don't think that Jake Bean is necessarily cut out for the Flames. And I understand why they signed him. However, there are more players in the Flame system that could be more impactful. Or there's some other players we're going to talk about a little bit that could also be difference makers. But let's say you run it back with this group. You're likely going to run into some of the same problems. Number one, we talked about your offense. Where is your scoring coming from consistently outside of Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri? You're hoping Matt Coronado has another great season. Connor Zary bounces back. Sharon Govich, Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, but you're betting on hopes. You're hoping this happens. And a lot of things have to happen in order for there to be success there, right? And the defense. Dustin Wolf cannot stand on his head again. You cannot wear this kid out 2 years into his NHL career. I'm sorry, but that is so irresponsible. And basically the same thing that Daryl Sutter did to Jacob Markstrom when he started 63 games this season. So at the end of the day, we need to find defensemen that can defend, number one. But number two, do it well. You can't just go out there and skate around for 10, 12 minutes a night. That's not what your job requires. You have to think defensively. You have to play defensively. You have to operate with that being at your front of your mind. And I feel like that just got lost. And it's not just the bottom pairing guys. There were times where I think just about every time Rasmus Andersson was out on the ice, and you could always tell leading up to a goal that the goal was going to go in because Rasmus Andersson just did not, he was not reading the play right. He was not following the play right. He just kind of stood there. And that's not what you want. So do you want another year of Dustin Wolf putting this team on his back? Or are you going to go out and do something to get the job that you want done, or a little bit closer to done? Coming up next, we're going to talk about taking away some options and seeing what the Flames lineup could possibly look like and some viable options here on Locked On Flames. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames and making the show part of your day. Make sure you are following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Just Belmosto. So there are some free agents, right, on this list, on this roster, that are going to need to be either re-signed or you're going to just let them walk. And the first player that I'm thinking of is Dan Vladar. Let's say the Flames do get rid of him and they sign this Russian goaltender that's apparently on their radar. Okay. So now you have Devin Cooley and this player kind of battling it out for the backup role. Okay. That's fine. I think regardless of whoever you were, whatever the goalie situation was, I think that we know that it's going to be Vladar backing up, but letting him go creates another opportunity of growth within the organization itself or from an outside, bringing an outside player in. But again, let's continue to work. Kevin Rooney. Okay. So this is a player that really does not contribute offensively, which gets people hot and bothered. And I understand that, because when you want a player out on the ice, you want them to make a visible difference. And I think the easiest way to gauge that is through goals and points. But Kevin Rooney does pretty well on the penalty kill, takes a lot of defensive zone faceoffs, and is a pretty good he's a pretty solid defensive player. He is getting older, so he's not necessarily the quickest on his feet anymore. And that's hard when the name of the game is speed and quickness. So let's say you replace him with a player like Sam Morton or Rory Currens. I think that Rory Currens, didn't necessarily have the long shot of sticking with the team this year. They gave him 5 games and said, okay, back to the AHL you go. And he's also a UFA at the end of this season. So maybe you lose him too. And who knows what happens from there. Or you bring up Sam Morton, who was a guy that you signed, an undrafted college free agent. Could really benefit from some NHL time to figure out his true trajectory. And that's the thing too, is you're not looking for guys to come in and make this immediate impact and difference when you're calling guys up from your minor league farm system. You have to figure them out. And they have to figure out your NHL system and how to thrive and survive in it. But a player that came to mind is either Trent Frederick, who's young, speedy. I don't necessarily see him signing with a Canadian team. He's currently with the Oilers after being traded there. But he can score goals rather consistently, fits that middle six need. So you slide Backlund down to your fourth line because he's getting old. Or Sean Kuraly. Sean Kuraly is a player that has always been sneaky, quietly good. So he is wrapping up his contract, 4-year contract with the Blue Jackets, and I am very impressed with how he has kept his momentum going after his time with the Bruins in that 2019 Stanley Cup run. He was a big part of that run and just shows up when you need him to, and you don't necessarily expect it. So I am pulling up his stats right now. Let's see. So he is 32 years old, 6'2", 215 pounds. So he's a big boy. So that, that already checks the boxes in the Flames system, right? He had 17 points over 82 games. But again, if you're looking for a fourth line center, you aren't necessarily looking for someone to score. If they score consistently, they're going to be higher up in your lineup. So 6 goals, 11 assists. He had 2 power play assists, which I find, I'm sorry, I read that completely wrong. All of his assists were at even strength this year. He had 88 shots on goal. His shooting percentage was down, but the biggest statistics right here, this is what got me. 70% of his faceoffs were in the defensive zone. 70% of his faceoffs were in the defensive zone, and he won 54.3% of all of his faceoffs. So that, my friends, is rather attractive. I like that. I like someone that can, be at the dot and win faceoffs, period, but also do it in the defensive zone when that really matters, especially when your team struggles defensively. So that's a name to keep on your radar. I think he would obviously want a raise from the $2.5 million he's making now. 3-year deal, $3.5 million. There you go. Again, not a cap genius, just something I would throw out there. All right. Now you get rid of Joel Hanley. Goodbye. Now you have to figure out a way to integrate Miramonov and Bean into your lineup, because how many 6th, 7th, and 8th defensemen can you have in an organization? Because you have Pahal, You have Miro, you have Jake Bean, and you have prospects that are ready to make the jump or on the cusp of making the jump. Zane Parekh and Hunter Brustowicz are two of those players, and you do not want to mess this up. But okay, that's fine. Let's say the Flames don't want to call it Brew or Parekh just yet. They don't want them to make the team right out of camp. They're still looking for someone out there that can get the job done. Someone on Twitter brought this up today, and they are a genius for this because it never would have crossed my mind. Parker Wotherspoon in Boston. He had a very good season, I would say, with the Bruins, considering how bad their season was. He had 1 goal and 6 assists over 55 games. But again, third pairing defenseman. You aren't looking for the next Erik Karlsson here. This kid was eating up 18 minutes a night, which is obviously higher pairing numbers. So let's say you move him on the same what's the word I'm looking for? Same pairing as Weegar, because that could work. That could work pretty well. A left and a right shot. So you put them together, and then you have your third pairing as Pahal and Bean, Pahal and Miro, like a combination of that. And Parker Wotherspoon is 27 years old. So again, you're not going to say, here's a 7-year deal. This kid hasn't played enough anywhere to secure or to make me believe that he is worth a 7-year deal. You probably do a 2-year deal. There's no reason to do more. But to me, it's worth a shot because he's going to be cheap. And you need to bring in, there's no point in overpaying people. You're going to be overpaying where, in forwards, probably more than you are in your, third pairing defenseman. But I think the Flames are going to have to make those changes. I'm not saying they have to obviously do the exact same ones I did, but it's something to think about. I really like the idea of Sean Kuraly taking over that third or fourth line spot. However, he is American. Don't know if he's going to want to come to Canada. He's only played for American teams during his career. So it is just, again, something to think about. I enjoy this. I think the possibility of the Flames running it back with ultimately the same rosters going, it's likely, but I do feel like we are going to see more changes than we may anticipate. So I hope none of you bought jerseys. Just kidding. Get ready to hang up your Andersson jerseys because I do think that he is going to be traded, especially now that Men's Worlds is done. The Flames can really focus on that. Apparently Ottawa is super interested. So we'll have to see where things go there. But ultimately, Craig Conroy has a lot of cap space. Craig Conroy has a lot of room to play with. And he holds the cards. He can dictate how quickly the Flames get through this rebuild. And that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for tuning in and hanging out. I hope you have a fantastic day. I will be back tomorrow with more Flames talk because I think there are some, names on the radar that are free agents that aren't necessarily on people's radar that may be a really good fit for the Flames. And I will see you all tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day.